We often look to the past to understand ourselves. Tonight, we turn our attention to the year 1891 and the solemn story of Carrie Brown. It's a case that reminds us that behind historical records are real people whose lives were irrevocably changed by the events that transpired. This is their story, as best as it can be told. On the morning of April 24, 1891, in the gloom of the East River Hotel, a disreputable lodging house on New York's waterfront, a chambermaid made a horrifying discovery. Inside the blood-soaked bed of room 31 lay the body of a guest. The crime was not just a murder, but a brutal and ritualistic mutilation, one whose shocking details would ignite a citywide panic and raise the terrifying possibility that the world's most infamous killer had crossed the Atlantic.
The victim was a woman named Caroline Martin, known to the rough-and-tumble inhabitants of the waterfront district as Carrie Brown. At around 60 years of age, she was a well-known, if tragic, figure in the area. A life of hardship and a struggle with alcoholism had left her destitute, and she survived by engaging in sex work. Despite her circumstances, she was known for a peculiar and unexpected trait. In moments of clarity, she was fond of quoting passages from Shakespearean plays. This habit earned her the nickname Old Shakespeare, a small spark of an educated past that flickered in the grim reality of her present life in the city's underbelly. When police arrived at the East River Hotel, the scene that greeted them was one of shocking brutality. Carrie Brown had been strangled, but the horror did not end there. Her body had been subjected to extensive post-mortem mutilation. A large criss-cross gash was carved into her lower abdomen, and other wounds had been inflicted with a savage precision. For the police and the press, the gruesome modus operandi was terrifyingly familiar. It bore the unmistakable hallmarks of Jack the Ripper, the unidentified killer whose 5 canonical murders had terrorized the Whitechapel district of London just 3 years prior. The news exploded across the city. The city's newspapers, in a frenzy of sensationalism, declared that the Ripper had come to America.
The pressure to solve the case fell squarely on the shoulders of one man, Inspector Thomas Byrnes. As the chief of the New York City Police Department's Detective Bureau, Byrnes was one of the most famous lawmen in the country, a figure known for his iron will and his infamous third-degree interrogation methods. His reputation was built on being infallible, a man who always got his culprit. With the city gripped by the fear of a Ripper-style panic, Byrnes was under immense political and public pressure to make a swift arrest, to calm the city, and to prove that his police force was more capable than their London counterparts at Scotland Yard.
The police investigation was chaotic from the start, with the crime scene poorly managed. Detectives focused on finding the unknown man who had checked into the hotel with Carrie Brown the previous night. Their attention soon settled on a lodger in a nearby room, an Algerian man named Ameer Ben Ali, who was known locally as Frenchie. Ben Ali was an outsider, a man whose language and customs made him an object of suspicion in the xenophobic climate of the era. A search of his room and the hotel hallway turned up what police claimed were bloodstains. Despite his frantic denials and a lack of any direct evidence connecting him to the murder in room 31, Ben Ali quickly became the prime and, indeed, the only suspect. Inspector Byrnes, needing a culprit, began a masterful campaign to convict Ameer Ben Ali in the court of public opinion. He fed a narrative to the eager reporters of New York's yellow press, portraying Frenchie as a fiendish foreign degenerate capable of unspeakable violence. The newspapers, locked in a fierce circulation war, printed every salacious detail and unsubstantiated claim. They depicted Ben Ali as a monster, a perfect fit for the public's image of a Ripper-style killer. The actual evidence was almost irrelevant. A powerful combination of a determined police inspector and a sensationalist press had already tried and condemned him before he ever set foot in a courtroom.
The trial of Ameer Ben Ali was a spectacle, driven by the public hysteria that had been whipped up by the press. The prosecution's case was entirely circumstantial. They had no witnesses who could place Ben Ali in room 31. The blood evidence was questionable, and some of the key testimony from other hotel residents was contradictory. Ben Ali's defense attorney, Charles G. F. Wall, argued passionately that his client was a scapegoat, a victim of prejudice, and that the police had tunnel vision, ignoring other leads in their haste to close the case. Despite the significant reasonable doubt, the jury was likely influenced by the prejudiced atmosphere and the powerful reputation of Inspector Byrnes.
The jury found Ameer Ben Ali guilty, not of first-degree murder, which would have carried a death sentence, but of murder in the second degree. He was sentenced to life imprisonment at Sing Sing Prison. Inspector Byrnes declared the case closed, his reputation intact. The city breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing the American Ripper was now behind bars. However, from the very beginning, serious doubts lingered about the verdict. Legal observers and even some journalists questioned the flimsy evidence and the fairness of a trial conducted in the midst of a media-fueled panic. Many believed that an innocent man had been sacrificed to calm public fears. For years, Ameer Ben Ali languished in prison, all but forgotten by the public. But his lawyer and a small group of advocates never stopped working to prove his innocence. A decade after his conviction, their efforts began to bear fruit. New evidence came to light that cast even greater doubt on the original verdict. It was suggested that some of the bloodstains used as evidence might have been from an animal, or possibly even planted. Most compellingly, reports emerged of a deathbed confession from another man, a lumber worker named George Frank, who claimed to have been the true killer of Carrie Brown. The foundations of the original conviction had crumbled.
In 1902, after Ameer Ben Ali had served 11 years in prison, New York Governor Benjamin Odell Jr. granted him a full pardon. The governor's official statement cited grave doubts about the evidence and the fairness of the original trial. Ben Ali was released and reportedly returned to his native Algeria, a free man who had lost a decade of his life. With his exoneration, the murder of Carrie Old Shakespeare Brown officially reverted to being an unsolved crime. The case stands as a chilling and cautionary tale of how media hysteria and racial prejudice can corrupt the course of justice, and how the desperate need for a simple answer can create a convenient monster, leaving the real one to disappear back into the shadows. Thank you for spending this time with us. Reflecting on these past events is a way of remembering the individuals involved and the impact their stories had on their communities. If you have any thoughts on today's case, we invite you to share them respectfully in the comments below. We hope you will join us again for our next true crime case.